2006 was actually a pretty good year for Sega, because this wasn't their only game. But because Sonic fans only care about Sonic games, it would make sense that this is all they talk about, especially when the best stuff only came out in Japan. And even though there was another Sonic game, it wasn't a platformer, so it doesn't count. And even though the franchise obviously wasn't stopping anytime soon, 2006 still wasn't over. Sonic still had one more game. Now, if you know what this game is, you're probably just as confused as the people that don't know what this game is. Because how could a game this short and this weird actually be a good game? Well, obviously this didn't sell as well as this. But there were still a lot of really cool games on it, just nothing I cared about because... And it really didn't make sense to spend almost twice the money just to play one game. So I thought the DS was the best choice, because Sonic fans only care about Sonic games. But after finally playing Sonic Rivals, I'm not so sure anymore, because this has everything that makes a great Sonic game.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
Obviously, this is a racing game, but right away you should notice one thing. Sonic Rivals is finally another Sonic game where you're not in a car, not on a hoverboard, and you're just running. Which means Sonic Rivals isn't just a racing game, it's a platformer too. Which isn't anything new for the series, but most Sonic games only have platform racing as a side mode or for special missions, instead of building the whole game around it. Which is why a lot of people don't understand the point of platform racers, because they're so used to platforming games with some racing elements, or racing games with some platforming elements, instead of playing games that have always been both. When a game series does something else, gameplay is going to change too. None of these are the same game. So if you're a fan of racing games, or a fan of platforming games, just because you duct tape two words together doesn't mean you're going to know what you're doing in Sonic Rivals, because this is its own type of game, and it's going to be different. One of the biggest changes is that the spin dash kinda sucks, because this isn't the type of game where you can just mash the B button for free speed. You can still charge it up for a quick boost, but staying in a ball isn't a good idea because it just slows you down, and you can get attacked. So instead of staying in a ball and blaming the game when you lose, just play the game like you're supposed to, you'll be fine. A lot of the levels will also have spots where you can boost forward or boost upward. The game will usually tell you which direction is the intended route, but you can go the other way and sometimes find a shortcut or a secret item. Your main method of attacking someone else is going to be your homing attack. It gives you a lot of extra height that you can use to skip parts of the level. You can also use your homing attack for a quick burst of speed, but you don't want to miss any boosters.
It was at this moment he knew.
So you can actually slide through your enemies instead, even if it's technically a little bit slower. And while you can't really spin dash jump off of slopes to go very high, you can still spin dash jump forward, because while in the air, you're going to maintain your speed until you homing attack or land on the ground. But if you land at the right angle, now you're running even faster. All this may seem like a lot to keep track of, and it is, but instead of other racing games where stat differences or character gimmicks make some characters straight up better than others, every character in Sonic Rivals plays the same, which means no gliding and no Latinas.
Adios, amigo.
The only real difference between the characters is this thing. And while every other item will work the same no matter who you play, this item is a special move unique to each character. Most people will tell you to just use Sonic, because the other special moves are just inconvenient. But that's why the first character you play as will most likely be Sonic. So you can learn just how inconvenient the other special moves really are. Because this thing tells you where everyone is at all times during the race. So if you just pay attention while playing as Sonic, you'll find out exactly how to beat Sonic.
It was at this
Now you might think the best strategy would be to grab all the stars before anyone else. And this kinda works, except regular items can also turn into stars. Which is why the level design in this game is actually a lot better than people realize. Obviously, the early stages take less than a couple minutes, and even though the later levels might take a bit longer, nothing overstays its welcome. In platformers, it's fine if you like long stages, but in racing games, you don't really want too many of these, or else people are going to get bored before the second lap. And since Sonic Rivals is a platforming game and a racing game, the stages are going to be short, but every stage is still going to have branching paths, shortcuts, and secrets. It also fixes one of the biggest problems of most Sonic games, because all the automated sections are just to force whoever's in first place to be wide open to attacks. So if you're falling behind, now's your chance to catch up, and even though it's still technically automation, you're not just waiting to get from point A to point B, because you're either defending yourself, attacking someone else, or placing traps.
It was at...
But you're clearly not going to have everything memorized the first time you play, which is why you're supposed to play it again, and again, and again. Now I get it. You don't want to play the same thing several times in a row, especially if you're used to playing really long games and then wait for the sequel.
I'm back, baby.
But Sonic Rivals isn't a long game, unless you really suck. And if you're not playing competitively, this is going to be most of your playtime. And outside of the special moves and some story differences, every character plays the same stages, in the same order, with the same moveset. This would normally be pretty annoying if you had to play the game 4 times just to unlock the final boss, but Sonic Rivals doesn't have a final boss. Well, it does, but it doesn't have a final boss. All you get for beating every story is a secret character that you can use in other modes. So if you don't even like Sonic Rivals and you don't plan on doing any of the extra content, it makes sense if you think the game is only 45 minutes long because that's how you're playing it. Fortunately, the extra content could go on almost forever, because a lot of it is up to random chance. In Sonic Rivals, pretty much everything you do will give you these things, which you can use to unlock more of these things. But most people have a big problem with the challenge mode, because completing the hard versions of the missions doesn't also automatically complete the easy versions. But this is because you don't actually get cards for checking these boxes, and instead, every time you complete a task, even if you've already done it before, you still get a card. This isn't a glitch, because the cards you get are random, so to actually complete the game, you're going to need to replay the missions. A lot. But you can save yourself some time on grinding if you just pay attention, because on easy missions, it's not too difficult to clear most of these in a single race and get a bunch of cards each time, compared to the hard missions where you'll most likely need to focus on just one task per race. But the cards you get from the easy missions have a very low chance of giving you anything good. Meanwhile, the cards you get from the hard missions are usually a lot better, with the medium missions being somewhere in the middle. But if you're tired of getting f***ed by RNG, you can also just trade the extras with a friend, or bet them in a race. So if the game were just a little more popular, grinding for cards wouldn't have been a problem. So putting everything together between the really cool gameplay mechanics, the level design, and how replayable it is, Sonic Rivals has everything it takes to be a really great game. But is it a great Sonic game? Obviously, Sonic's not a stranger to weird story choices, or barely even having a story at all. But if the story sucks, the game sucks. And at first glance, this random spin-off has a story just like any other random spin-off. So it makes sense that even if the game is really fun, most Sonic fans would forget this thing even existed. But if you can get past all this, there's actually a lot of really cool character interactions that we don't get very often, and the answers to a lot of lore questions people are still asking. Now, if you're gonna say this game isn't canon because you don't like it or something, I don't know. You can leave, I guess. But for the real Sonic fans, get your tinfoil hats ready, because after this game erased itself, Sonic Rivals is technically the first time we see Silver. And since he doesn't remember anyone, he's clearly not the same guy. Which would be cool in itself and totally worth talking about if it weren't totally overshadowed by one line that actually changes everything. Now, if you're stupid, you'll think this contradicts Sonic Rush, because this guy is this guy's bad guy, who's all the way in another dimension from this guy, whose bad guy is this guy. So not only is this a thing now, but since this guy is from the future, and this guy is from the future...
Oh, hey, what's up? I'm Future.
Obviously the Soul Dimension is still a different dimension, but it's not your fault you don't know what a dimension really is. Because most people think a dimension can only be an entirely different plane of existence, when the real definition is just a mathematical representation of multiple data points, which means this is a dimension, and so is this, which is why this graph is considered to be two-dimensional. And if you wanted to connect two two-dimensional graphs together, now you have a third dimension, which you can take even further with another dimension, and another, and another, and another. But we don't need to go this far, because we know both these realities share a dimensional state. But thanks to this one throwaway line and way too much sci-fi bullshit,
It's no use!
we finally know what's actually separating these dimensions. Unfortunately, too many Sonic fans think this guy invented time travel. But if you've been paying attention, time and traveling through it has always been a huge part of the series. Now, this isn't to say every alternate dimension in Sonic is a separation by time. And while there is still the possibility that this isn't a time travel story, we've got 200 years until we know for sure. And we're really only scratching the surface here. In other words, just hear me out for a second. This doesn't happen, these two never meet, and now Eggman Jr. grows up to become the new bad guy of the new future. From here it gets a little weird because this game's story is a little weird, and the sequel doesn't really help much. So this guy goes back in time when Blaze isn't looking, and because time travel is this guy's whole thing, Silver also goes back in time to follow Eggman Nega. And as crazy as this story is, the worst part is this camera is never actually explained. Something like this would make sense in other stuff, but Sonic doesn't have anything like this, and the closest we have is this thing, because Mario and Sonic have shared a game before, but Eggman Nega isn't in these games. Okay, but this guy definitely isn't here. These guys won't help this guy find him, and nobody else in these games has his stuff. Alright, I see what you're doing, Sega, but these two still never talk to each other. Yeah, no. We're not doing this. Spin-offs don't count, nothing's canon, Sonic was never good.